Hi, Johanna. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Liam?
I'm okay. It's been a few weeks since our last one, but we have another exciting podcast today. Who do we have on the line? Deb? Who's that? Who's that, Deb?
Oh, hello, that's me, Liam. I'm Deb, Carson, and I'm here to join you with your podcast today. So there's, the full complement of Rail Innovation Group people. How exciting.
Indeedy. So the reason we're doing the podcast today, well, I'm in London. You're in the Medway towns. Johanna's in Brighton. But we have some colleagues from Sheffield with us because we were going to do our Startup Rail event in Sheffield today. It got postponed in March, and we thought, optimistically, we'd do it in July. But now it's been postponed again. But not to waste the opportunity, we are dialing in and chatting with our hosts, who will be hosting us at some point in the future.
We will.
I just want to introduce both Lucy and James. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Ladies first.
Okay then, so hi, I'm Lucy Pryor, Business Engagement Director at 3Squared, which means I go out and talk to an awful lot of people about how great, truly great, the 3Squared products and services are and our relevance in the whole railway ecosystem. Over to James.
I'm James. I'm the Commercial Director and co-founder of 3Squared. So we've been going since 2002. We got into the rail industry about 8 years ago. And now 95% of our work is within rail. And we've been growing ever since. We've got 60 employees now here in Sheffield. And we are systems integrations specialists and software developers, essentially.
Right. Now, obviously, we're on Zoom, so we can see you, but we can see you're both wearing branded T-shirts. Point. And also, James, you're apparently in your office.
Well, virtually. I think if I push my hand that way, it disappears. There we go.
I think that's quite clever, but why does it do that?
I'm not sure.
But it must be something to do with the CGI or something. I don't know how it works, but
yeah, it's like a green
it's
screen.
funny.
Right. So we had a bit of an agenda that we were going to talk about, which is basically why we were going to do Startup Rail and then learn all about 3Squared and the wider economy. So kicking off, I just wanted to introduce this, which is, so Startup Rail is our program where we go around the country as a rail innovation group, and we try to engage with small clusters of digital talent. So we've gone to places like Liverpool, Newcastle, Bristol, we were going to go to Sheffield, and Brighton, we were going to go there too.
We should have been there 2 weeks ago, shouldn't we? Or last week. We should have been in Brighton last week, shouldn't we? Yeah.
It was raining.
I know, but it's just so sad that we're not doing our national tour.
We will do our national tour.
We will do our national tour. It will be back.
So
no fear.
We reached out to local communities and through our network found small, interesting businesses doing interesting digital tech solutions and tried to attract them into rail. Telling about the opportunities available, the support that there is, things they might not know, good entrance into the market. I guess a bit of managing expectations about the market as well. And then just got people sort of into the network. And as a result of that, we've had some very good previous people who have come along to events and got into the rail supply chain. Won't mention any because this is all about 3Squared today. But there are definitely
and nobody else is paying us.
Definitely successes in the line. So we want to continue that afterwards, and we are excited to go to Sheffield because there is a lot of interesting things happening there and support available. So I think that's probably where we mentioned Sheffield Digital, if you're okay to do that, Lucy.
So Sheffield Digital is actually a trade body for the digital community within Sheffield city region. It tends to focus more on the Sheffield city as a region as opposed to the entire local enterprise partnership. I think that's more in terms of the success they've had with responsiveness to their outreach as opposed to the fact that there aren't any digital companies outside of Sheffield. But it's really interesting. It brings together a whole cohort of digital companies, and their argument is that digital is a sector in its own right. It's now so much more than simply an enabler of other sectors. And there's an interesting conversation we keep having internally: are we digital or are we rail? Well, we're both. And I raised that at a seminar just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the really senior guys at Network Rail said, well, this is what we want to be. We want rail needs to be digital. Rail is digital now, and it's not just digital railway and signalling. So going back to what Sheffield Digital is, like I said, it's a trade body for digital companies within Sheffield City region. But excitingly, because we've got high value catapult centres in the region as well, we've got the Advanced Manufacturing Centre just on the city outskirts, who are running digital manufacturing meetups, and again discussing where digital can enhance the capabilities of all manner of other companies in all other sectors, and cross-fertilise those skills and those ways of thinking. So it really, really is a vibrant digital community up here in sunny Sheffield.
Are you from Sheffield? Are you biased?
I'm from Donny originally. I emigrated to Sheffield from Doncaster via Bristol and South America. That's my little strapline. So I always knew I'd end up back in South Yorkshire, but with a fair amount of travelling and working overseas in between all of that.
Right.
So yeah, I am biased though. But I am biased. However, there's an official piece of research going on into digital and railway clusters across the north. So looking at the whole of the Northern Powerhouse region, and actually when I was assisting that body with their work, not just through bias and not just through my networking and affinity with people that I know locally, because my railway contacts are national, it turns out my digital contacts are quite national as well. And actually advising this research body on digitally innovative companies working in rail, there was also a cluster just naturally formed out of the South Yorkshire going up to West Yorkshire areas. Well, it's really interesting. It really is a hotbed, I'd say, of digital.
I was just wondering that though, whether there was sort of like a cluster that was going on, with between Doncaster, Sheffield and York, and whether that was triangulating in the same way that it does between Milton Keynes, Oxford and Cambridge, if there was something else going on there.
The golden triangle that you were talking about last week. I think we need to come together as a community better. So for example, there's the York Rail Innovation Community, which has had a few meetings and actually reached quite a few people. Its inaugural physical event easily had 40, 50 people there. We're talking that was about 18 months ago now, I think. And it shouldn't be that we're competing for attention. It should be that we work together. So yes, there's a whole load of stuff happening in York. There's a whole load of stuff happening across Sheffield City region, which includes Doncaster. Then also, you've got Manchester, and that's only 30 miles away. So collectively, as a northern, and James travels that route daily when we're in the office. So there is a massive capability across the north. So perhaps that, we've got a rhubarb triangle, now we've got a digital triangle as well up north, and it should be, I would argue that, it should be brought together better.
And what do you think stopping it being brought together better, Lucy? Or what do you think the sort of critical components are to make that happen?
I think this is my very personal subjective opinion. I think there's still the consideration that North is about heavy manufacturing. We've got a whole host of skills and offerings. So if we look at all of the North as a region, we've got 2 massive hydrogen creation points in the northeast and west. We do have
I'm muting him. He's muted.
We do have that mass of technical digital skills. We've also got a share of catapult centres. We've got the lion's share of the Ukraine network. And then don't forget as well, and this is really crucial that we remember this, we're between Scotland and the Midlands region. So it's not just about, I'm not just talking about Northern Powerhouse here, Northern Powerhouse as part of the route up to Scotland, Northern Powerhouse as travelling through Midlands Connect. We've got to be, so where I've just said that perhaps York and Sheffields need to speak to one another better. Maria Machin-Kozak, so I can never pronounce Maria's surname properly, but Maria and the guys at TFN, they have MOUs in place, and that's absolutely right, because I think we'll be talking about levelling up later. We've all got to recognise our respective skills and our respective strengths, and then work out how we can put those in conjunction with one another for a better holistic whole offering.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, that point about, you know, the North is seen as a kind of heavy manufacturing and not, it's like a philosophical sort of point, isn't it, really? It's like, and do you think government sees it like that in a way, even though they, let's face it, they do talk a good game about them, you know, levelling up?
Yeah, but I'm at the meeting. Hang on, my dog's going mad. One moment.
No.
Phones, dog barking, we've got it all on here.
Sorry. Joys from working from home. Just had the delivery driver that wouldn't go away.
Can I ask you, James, just before we get into a wider conversation, is with regard to Sheffield, is why did you start a company in Sheffield?
Originally, I went to Sheffield Hallam University and did computer studies there. So I just run upstairs. And I met my colleague Tim on my final year of my degree, and we worked well on projects together. We thought, well, let's start a company. So that was back in 2002. And then we started 3Squared back then, and it's just grown over the years. But we've always had strong connections with Sheffield Hallam University because we take on placement students from them every year. I think over the years we've taken over, I think it's close to 100 students that have come through 3Squared and done placements with us. And I always tout it as the best part of the degree, because I did a placement at university and thought that is really where you get the industry knowledge. And that's what I say to all the students, is the best part of the degree, because you learn so much more on the job. And the majority of them do come back to 3Squared full time. And usually get a first class honours degree as well, because they've learned so much working with 3Squared, and we've got a fantastic graduate programme and placement programme going on that we do get the cream of the crop of the students, because we get some great recommendations from them as well, so it's great. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, so you say you just started off from university. Did you have a business idea, or because it's highly unusual, isn't it, to go straight from university into your own business? Most people sort of like try a career of some sorts first and then realise that working for people is rubbish, so they go and start off their own business.
True. I mean, I think doing the placement years, I did a couple of placement years actually. I did one at PlusNet, and that kind of showed me the ropes of a software house, which was really useful, obviously, with 3Squared. And Tim had some projects on the side as well that he was working on. Plus, I was developing websites on the side as well for my hometown. And I realised that, you know, there's more that can be done with taking Tim's skills and minds together to develop something. So we had an idea. We were more into the web design and software programming. We also did e-marketing. We kind of threw a lot of different things at a wall, and we kind of saw what stuck. And it was the software side that grew from there. And during the years that we were established, the iPhone came out, the iPad, and you know, applications were a big thing, and we kind of got into that market with mobile apps. And then we were working for lots of different organizations, construction, retail, and various different sectors. And when we got into rail, we had all this industry knowledge from other industries that we've then put into the rail to say, well, have you thought about doing it this way? And it's really worked, and we've found that our niche now is within the rail sector.
So if you've grown then, sorry Liam, I didn't know.
Back to ask the same questions as you. So
well, you go on, then you ask it.
No, you do.
Okay. So no, I was just say, so if you, as you've grown, I mean, like, is it because you saw the opportunity in rail, because rail didn't have the expertise that you could bring to it?
I think, yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of gaps, and you know, there's a lot of legacy systems as well within the rail system, within the rail organisations, and we were great at investigating problems and finding a solution for it. Plus, we were really techies, you know, geeks that like to integrate with things as well. And we found that these systems were kind of just given the bare minimum, and that there was lots of different information in silos that we could then bring together our expertise and integration methods that could then provide the right information to the right people on performance and improvements. And it's worked really well in that sense, the fact that we found the industry and being able to sort of change it through using our services to develop a suite of products called RailSmart.
So how do you make sure that as you've grown, I mean, we can come on to it in a minute, but you've had some wild successes recently. As you've grown and become more and more of a rail company, a company in the rail sphere, how have you made sure that the culture of what you do still questions rail?
Still questions rail.
I was going to ask you something similar about that, actually, because which might help to sort of focus your response, James. Sorry to butt in, but right. I was thinking it's very interesting because everyone always says that the rail industry is very kind of, you know, stuck in its ways, and it's not very open to change, and you know, it's very difficult to get people to do things differently in rail and all this kind of thing. So I'm intrigued as to what your experience has been, because obviously it's been a very successful space for you.
Yeah, I think by having people who aren't necessarily in rail has really helped as well, because they've had different ideas taken away from the blinkered approach of rail. This is how we do it this way. And we've gone in there and suggested ideas. And fortunately, a lot of the clients and a lot of people in the rail industry are quite receptive to change. So that they're up for these ideas of trying new things. And it's worked. It's been listening to their problems and being able to solve them through software.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're also overall in a really interesting area right now, because as James said, there are so many legacy systems and there are so many things that are done because they're just done this way. Then at the same time, if we look at HS2, for example, you know, the vehicle builders are all waiting now for the results. They've essentially had to put bids in for vehicles that aren't going to be built for another however many years, never mind how long they're going to be in service. So we've got, right now, I'd say railways in this really strange but fortunate position at the same time. How do we marry legacy with future-proof? And because there's a shift in conversation to being outcome or output led rather than results led. So rather than clients now saying how they want you to do something, there does feel like there is this ongoing evolution where it's like, this is what we want to achieve. How can supply chain get us there? And if that thinking really is deeply ensconced, that is going to enable more non-railway companies into rail, because it might be that their means of tackling and solving a problem are going to help the way that 3Squared was doing 8-9 years ago when it first came into rail. But it's also finding the right person to have the right conversation with, which is, I think James and Tim can just smell them out.
But I was just wondering, do you think in the last 10 years rail has in a cliche way been on that journey, and it's taken them a long time to realise that outcomes are better than being told how you get there?
Yeah, and I think that's because we're finally now shaking BR. You know, we're not British Railway anymore, and it's taken a long time culturally for the railway world to really, really embody that. COVID's changed a lot of things really drastically over the last few months. But, you know, even 5 years ago, I'd be speaking to people and they still refer to themselves as BR people. And if you look at the Commonwealth and ex-colonial countries, there's still a huge BR footprint or a BR legacy out there. So that's not to say that mortality is a good thing, but as the market has had to evolve and therefore the work has had to evolve, and as we do become more outcome led, it's forcing us to look at things differently, I'd argue.
So
your dog is very
I'm very sorry. I've tried to bribe him again.
You should introduce him.
I'll bring him in a minute. Do you want me to pick on mute?
No. It's part of the charm of the podcast that we have a guest.
somersaulting behind me today.
So being based in Sheffield and as you've grown, I think the city's digital culture has also grown. Do you think that's symbiotic, or have you benefited from them more than, I mean, you're obviously providing local digital jobs. So do you think it's you can't even see my fingers, but my fingers are pushing together at the same time. The benefit of the audience, I'm holding my hands up.
I think we're very lucky in Sheffield to have two fantastic universities, and there is a lot of talent coming out of the universities that has helped grow the digital Sheffield Digital, and there's a lot of companies that have come into Sheffield as well, digital companies, because they've realised there is some great talent here as well, and unfortunately there isn't enough developers to go around now. So it's a bit of a struggle when companies are recruiting now, but I think it's only a good thing, really, the fact that we've got we've got all this talent. We've got some great companies in Sheffield. It's really not very well known. I think it's one thing that Sheffield is doing more of. It's shouting about the fact that we have got a great digital presence, and I think as 3Squared's grown over the years, that there's just been more and more companies that have come to Sheffield.
So I'll let one of the two of you mention about which successes you've had, but in the two most recent press releases I've seen, it always says Sheffield based 3Squared. Is that something you put on, or is that people noting that you're from Sheffield?
I think on the recent one with HS2, it's been noted the fact that it's a contract that's not been won and been in London. So
exactly, they'll be very keen on that.
And it's a really exciting project with the HS2 one. We're using our Rail Smart software to help deliver a tunneling program between Euston and the M25 using Rail Smart and some bespoke components to form a supply chain management system. So it's really exciting to be part of that. And one of the other big ones is working with Network Rail. So they've taken on our flagship competency management software to continuously monitor and improve employee competencies. And it's a great win for us, because it means they're rolling it out to Network Rail. We've successfully rolled it out to a certain part, and it's growing out to the rest of NR by the end of the year. So it's really exciting.
So were you bidding for that work?
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on. No, go on, Debs. You go on.
Okay, I was just going to ask, James, you mentioned about the university, and I'm interested because I do some work for a high-speed rail industry group, as you know, and we are often trying to sort of connect with some of the sort of bigger universities on sort of curriculum development, because there's sometimes can be a sort of gulf emerging between what the universities are teaching and what industry want. But I think in the digital space that must be quite, because everything is evolving. It feels to me, that's probably just because I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but it always feels like the change is happening really rapidly in the digital sort of sector. So do you do any work do you do any sort of collaborative work with the universities on sort of what you need as a company?
I'm actually on the industry advisory board at Sheffield Hallam, and so we always obviously communicate about what our needs are as a company. And there's quite a few other tech companies there as well, about saying that you need to evolve your course to suit this particular area, and they're really grateful for that, because obviously technology does move along really fast, and the lecturers can only keep up with so much. So they are very grateful for that, and obviously we really like to give back to especially Hallam, because they've been really good to us. So it's a symbiotic relationship, really.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it's interesting as well to note on that evolution of the skills needed is being felt everywhere. So just last week I was in conversation with Neil Robertson of NSAR. Mm-hmm. He was talking to me about they are now releasing apprenticeships in systems engineering, cybersecurity, I think it's computer science. There were 4 very, very digital technical apprenticeships that are now coming out of NSAR. And the point when James was talking about all the interns that we take on placement who then become full-time employees, we work hard at the apprenticeship side of things as well. There's more to be done. I think it's important that we reflect that digital need in the workplace to universities, but also to any further and higher education and training providers. We're not ever just going to shop from universities for staff.
But I think that's interesting in itself, isn't it? Because just also, you say about looking for a wider talent pool in that respect, but also when James is saying about a shortage of developers, is that local to Sheffield, or is that nationally that there's a shortage and we need to do more to get people working in the digital space regardless of what level they enter in at?
I think nationally, and I certainly think across the north. So kind of to answer the question that Deb asked earlier before Archie interrupted, is the north perceived as an old-fashioned manufacturing base? To a degree, yes, but then also look at some of the flagship names that have come up north. So Channel 4 and BBC, for example, based up North Burberry, have got a massive centre in Leeds, and they all have digital requirements. So whether it's devolution or whether it's cheaper rental rates or whatever it may be, people are moving out of the capital. HS2, I mean, I know Birmingham isn't the north, but that was a really great point.
It is when you're sitting in Brighton.
Okay.
but I don't know how many times a week I'd normally be in London. It's not going to be as much after lockdown because we can now. We've all learned how to have meetings through screens. But I do think that entire canvas is going to be more spread geographically, and it's a good thing. It really is a good thing, because otherwise everything does become London centric in terms of where do you shop for suppliers, where do you shop for your latest thinking. Was it 6 people out of your entire audience last week were not from London and the surrounding areas? And how many of those were down south who weren't the 6? We've got to look further across. So the fact that you're going to have physical meetings in Liverpool and Sheffield and Manchester, that's brilliant.
But I think it is, I mean, with you touching on the future beyond where we are, I mean, do you get a feeling that people will start moving to other areas because we've all realised actually we don't need to be in the southeast, and we're only here because of its ability to commute easily into London, because everyone forces us to go in there for meetings and workshops and parliamentary business or whatever it is that we're doing. It all seems to focus in on going into London, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll necessarily mean massive changes in the housing market, but I do think there's going to be a lot more. I mean, I, for one, if anyone invites me to a 9 a.m. meeting in London on a Monday morning, I'm probably going to say no now.
You should have said no before.
I would imagine it will. I would imagine it will kind of encourage, obviously a lot of students come from the southeast and come up to some of your bigger, Leeds University, all of the big universities. And I guess there's going to be much more of an opportunity for people to stay put once they've qualified, whereas before, everybody would be just sort of moving en masse back to their hometown or their home city or what have you.
I think as well.
But culturally, you need to.
You've got to have a base.
Northern cities, you need to have the buzz, sort of the density in the centre to attract the university leavers. And that may happen now, but it won't happen if people are working at home on a screen, because they're still.
No, and I was just about to say as well, it probably depends upon your role within a company as to whether you work from home or not, because actually some of the work that you do, that bounce that you get off being in a physical team and being in one place and share, because the one thing I am missing, I'm not missing some of the silly hours that we do for travelling, but I am missing just the conversation that you have and the ideas that come about and the bits of company knowledge that you share just by being in a space. So I don't think everyone's going to stay totally home working, and for any company with a cohesive team to succeed, you're going to have to offer all of your staff that ability to be together and to use that lovely office that we just redeveloped.
I was just wondering.
No, sorry, go on, Joanna.
No, I was just wondering to find in terms of that, missing that buzz. Have you done anything to try and contrive that atmosphere? Because I've done things like, some teams have worked on sort of like we've just kept Zoom on all day. so we sort of like, so we have our chat, and then we do sort of like a couple of hours work, and then we'll come back and bounce ideas around on what we've been working on, but we just keep it on all day.
Wow.
Go on, James, over to you, because we've done some good stuff.
I think having Slack and Zoom's really helped, and Teams, just to keep the communication going. We do weekly pub quizzes as well on a Friday, so each team hosts a quiz, and it's really a good laugh at the end of the week. So yeah.
It's been interesting I look after a high-speed rail apprentice network for high-speed rail group, and so I talk to the apprentices from that network quite a bit, and one of the things they've been saying is that actually, a lot of them live in kind of accommodation that doesn't really suit them working at home sort of 24/7, which is interesting, and also they just, as you sort of were alluding to, Lucy, they're just really missing that kind of that sense of being able to speak to people that are a bit more senior in the organisation, sort of outside of a formal kind of meeting or what have you, just that opportunity for sort of informal mentoring or just general that kind of engagement. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the majority, I would say, of the people that I speak to who are probably, I don't know, under 30 anyway, I would imagine that most of them are from the apprentice network, have said that they would definitely want to go back into the office, maybe not completely full time, but they are actually missing the office environment in that sense, which is interesting. Yeah. So I think there is a bit of a sort of intergenerational split there, maybe.
Yeah,
we'd be missing the office. I was just also wondering, bringing up sort of like thinking about younger people and digital opportunities and the wider economy. And that is, the news is getting pretty bad out there, given sort of like where the economy is, and like lots of companies are making people redundant because our way of life is changing. And I was wondering, in terms of moving into your space and training and retraining and that, is there opportunities for people to do that? Are you aware of that, where they could retrain and meet that gap that that your industry has? Is it easy?
Yeah, I think within software, if people have a software background, then it's all good. It's changing from one sector to another. You could easily slot in with 3Squared. We've got a fantastic training program as well to get people on board and up to speed.
It's definitely something that HS2 are kind of, the high-speed rail space is looking at is where they can bring in, you've got people that are kind of, the aviation industry obviously has taken quite a hit over this period, and I know that a lot of the companies in my high-speed rail group will be looking at digital engineers from that space, because all of those skills are transferable, aren't they, really?
And that goes back to Sheffield Digital's point. Digital is a sector and an employer in its own right. And James was completely right that actually we're not all railway people, therefore we can challenge and question rail. But also it's not fair to assume that if you work in software that you're a millennial. I'm not a spring chicken, but I am not the youngest person in the company. And so we've got technical staff who are in their 40s, if not 50s. Yeah. So let's not just say that you have to be under a certain age to be able to work in this space. So yes, there will be a need for people to retrain, kind of, I suppose, to suit the nuance of their application. But it doesn't mean completely and utterly retrain. It's redirecting the user interface, let's say.
Yeah, but it goes back to what James was saying right at the start, which is that actually that's what rail needs. Rail needs people coming into the industry from across many different other sectors, because that's what brings in that kind of fresh eyes, fresh ability to challenge, all those kind of things.
Yeah. How long has railway been saying it wants to cross transfer technology from other sectors? You've got to apply the same approach to its people as well.
Yes. Also not contain them once they get into rail and say, you're a rail person forevermore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Although, have any of us on here actually had a career in an paid job in rail?
Hey,
You.
I'm the only one, aren't I? I'm the person that gets up and says, I've done such and such in railway and I'm more senior, so I'm more important than all of you. I'm that person.
Having worked in the railway sector or within the railway supply chain, how are you defining that?
Well, I've done both.
Mm.
You see, because I've worked. I started on the railway. See, I'm going to do the story now. I'll take you, force me into it. So I started on the railway on the first day of privatisation. So 1st of January 1994, I worked for Railtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a part-time job when I was doing my masters at Exeter University. So I looked after all the operating notices for the estates division of Exeter Depot. So that was my little. So that was my job for 3 mornings a week to supplement my masters. And
yeah, you can digitise that.
Well, it is digitised now, isn't it? Because in those days I used to have to photocopy them all, staple them all, and then put them in everybody's little cubby hole. But now it just arrives on whatever your preferred digital device is. But I don't know.
I'm very glad to hear that that's moved on.
Yeah, I think they've been doing that for about 10 years now. So I think most operators have been doing that for about 10 years. so in some ways, should it be moving on to something else now? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, and what I also remember about that job was because as part of the safety notices, I'm going off on a complete tangent now, was because between Exeter and Barnstable, I lived in the middle of the line, but for 2 months I got on a bus because the railway line was closed for the whole period because it rained nearly all winter. And there are I think there's 29 bridges between Exeter and Barnstable, and every time it rained, divers had to go and inspect the bridges again. So they never ended up reopening the line for 2 months, and I was responsible for coordinating the divers as well. So so I was like, oh no, here we go again. I've got to go into work and coordinate the divers and all their safety notices and everything when I went into work in the morning. So I don't know whether they still have that as a problem or they fixed it, but that would be something you could apply a digital solution to asset monitoring or something, rather than sending divers down to inspect whether it was still structurally safe.
So what advice do you have for a digital company?
Yeah, we're progressing well as an industry, I think. One of the other projects we're doing at the moment is to do with VSTP, which is very short-term planning. We've managed to win a competition with RSSB for that one, and I think that's another thing that we're helping with, and we're having conversations with other organisations now about how to start predicting that sort of thing as well, predicting delays and that kind of thing. And this is the new area. Once we get that right, I think the rail is going to significantly change and be able to have foresight as to what's going to occur if something does go wrong. And I think that is the crucial game changer, which we're hoping to get in on as well.
Right.
The thing that I would add to that, not in terms of my advice for digital everything, is that I think what's interesting is that with James saying that's a game changer, is because I get the feeling that the industry has moved away from it having to be a big digital railway program, because there are other ways that you can deliver the outcomes of a digital rail program without it necessarily meaning huge amounts of infrastructure investment and disrupting the railway to be able to deliver the positive outcome that you're seeking, like predicting where disruptions are likely to happen and how you respond to them. Because I think probably as a customer or a passenger, depending on how you want to define it, passengers aren't really interested in the big infrastructure stuff, but what they want is information, and am I going to get home, and how long is the delay, and is the information you're giving me accurate? And I think possibly that's where rail has started to get to, is it's not necessarily about the big infrastructure elements, it's about making sure that you can give out trusted information and it's accurate.
True.
Well, it can't. It can't come soon enough that the rail industry actually starts to focus on actually passengers, because they're the ones that actually get on the trains and they're the ones that actually need a decent service. So I do remember somebody saying, I can't remember where it was, that, you know, years ago when anyone mentioned passengers in a room full of railway people, everyone sort of winced and sort of thought, oh gosh, let's not talk about them, you know, getting on our nice trains. So yeah, I think that's a big move, isn't it? Kind of psychologically, I think, for the industry.
I'm not going to mention names, but I've heard that expression this year at a public event.
Really?
Yeah, and yes, and I winced when I heard it because I couldn't believe, and there were some senior people in the room, and it was a social event, but I still think it was inappropriate, because I think the irony of current circumstances is that maybe a lot of people have got their wish and they're now realising actually it's not so pleasant without our customers.
Without future.
You know, it's a novelty for the first week, but I think now that the railway's actually missing them.
I think so. I think so. And I think it is, I mean, I appreciate you heard that recently, but I mean, I get a sense, and I'm a newbie to the rail sector, but I definitely get a sense that everything is becoming much more focused around sort of passenger needs, and that, you know, that's also around the kind of inclusivity agenda, and, you know, getting people with impairments to be able to use the transport network more, you know, more easily than they can now, and all that kind of thing. I think it's might be small steps, but I think it's definitely happening, and projects like HS2 are a great catalyst for that as well, aren't they? Because obviously such a big infrastructure project can sort of set the bar quite high for some of that stuff, which can only be a good thing for the industry. Yeah. Sorry, that's my little speech to move everything into a positive light again.
So I think it's quite interesting. I mean, because James, you've already mentioned about your HS2 contract, and you know, the boon for more technology applications. So what is it actually that you are doing for HS2?
So it's a supply chain management system, which gives them better visibility of the freight supply chain, giving live performance information, cost management, real-time operational control data. So essentially we're taking our RailSmart platform and producing a bespoke module for that, for the HS2 contractors, essentially.
So when you say freight, you mean actually do you mean the logistics of moving the dirt and things like that away from the site? Yeah,
so we've got a name for that, but we probably shouldn't say it, should we? But we
no swears.
Dirty McDirk face or something. Yeah, Bulk Smart is the name of the application we're developing. But essentially that allows them to know exactly what is being moved out of a depot or out of a yard, for example. So it's quite an exciting project. And hot off the press is another one we've developed. We've developed RailSmart Virtual Campus, which is a blend of training tools for e-learning with interactive content. So essentially we've got this new learning management system within RailSmart that helps people on board within our software, and provide sort of a great platform for training, which is fantastic for our clients, and is ideal for this sort of situation where everybody's working remotely as well.
Wow,
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, is it
tag you all in?
Did you say sorry, Lucy?
I'll tweet it in a bit and tag you all in.
So I get excited by logistics because obviously I'm a logistics nerd, but I think in terms of the moving dirt around the bulk smart and that is that so HS2 can manage their environmental credentials, so minimizing or is it maximizing taking dirt away by rail and also making sure that it gets repurposed in a sustainable way? Is that the plan?
All part of that, so it includes like the cost management aspect of knowing exactly where it's moved to, making sure that all the trains are filled up correctly, etc., and where they're going to go as well. So they've got the full audit trail of where things are going for that, to make sure it is moved or recycled or whatever.
Yeah, because is there any plans to do anything with that? Do you know? Because I know because HS1 they built a new bird sanctuary or something, didn't they, out on the Essex estuary and that? And I think that's always really good with infrastructure projects where you get sort of like a benefit from that.
Absolutely. I'm not too familiar with what exactly they're doing with it, but I can certainly find out.
But it's really exciting that, you know, the direct use of bulk smart is the supply chain management. It's making sure that the bulk is taken out of sight and moved in an optimal manner, that the freight trains are loaded as effectively and efficiently as possible, that you're getting best fuel consumption in relation to the load. But then the secondary benefits, it does tie completely into that circular economy sustainability element of HS2 as well. So it's, for me personally, it's really nice to know that there's an eco credential to a software solution that we're providing. Its direct benefit is this, but actually its knock-on benefits are also that.
Perhaps I should speak to you afterwards. We're doing a report on HS2 and ecology report for my high-speed rail group at the moment. We've been talking to all of our sort of, you know, big tier 1 kind of members about what they're doing on and off the route. But that would be a great one to get in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah. Regional company from Sheffield as well.
I have to speak to HS2 Limited, see how comfortable they are with talking about it at the moment. But
right, I think we need to draw us to a close. We probably all got 3 p.m. meetings, but I was just going to ask if you have any advice for local companies or keen people.
I think they should join Rail Innovation Group because you have fantastic networking opportunities. We have some great collaboration partnerships from Rail Innovation Group as well. So that's my
quote for our website. Thank you.
I'm going to give it a thumbs up.
We promised that we didn't tell him to say that. We did not.
Free wine and snacks, which is a bonus.
Meetups to start soon. Any last advice?
I just want to echo what James said, because if you look at some of the startups and non-rail companies that have joined this group and therefore had conversation in the railway sector and are now really successful in the railway sector as a result, that's brilliant for them as individual companies and not being political. I actually think it's a great way for companies to then also use Rail Innovation Group to springboard into eligibility for future membership into larger organisations and help become those bigger, older railway companies that then shape policy. It's got to be a constant churn and a cycle. We've got to bring fresh thinking in. We've got to bring fresh companies in, because otherwise it will always just be business as usual, and we won't ever think outside because we've not got the capacity to.
And that's what we always describe our startup events as building a grassroots community of rail suppliers. So that's a great description, Lucy, of what we are actually trying to do, is get those kind of grassroots companies in and then just build through the ecosystem of rail.
Yeah.
What a positive message to finish on. Join us. James and Lucy and Deb and Johanna, thank you very much for everyone joining us today, and we will all meet up in Sheffield
soon.
Oh, we will.
Yes, we will. I should look forward to it.
With pizza.
The office looks lovely though.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.